Tonight's topic: learn to speak her language. A free session to improve communication with your wife. I don't know about you, but it seems like communication and trust are like the two big ones that come up a lot when it comes to like marriage counseling or improving a relationship. They seem to be like maybe honesty is right up there, is like a key thing you need. And honestly, in working with a lot of men on this stuff, we really do overthink it. We make something that's really quite simple so complicated, it's about impossible to achieve it. So my goal tonight is to help break it down and make it be more simple and easy to act on in your life, uh, specifically with communication tonight. Here's a couple points we're going to cover. Find out what makes her say, "He really gets me." And learn two common mistakes that block good communication no matter your situation. So, not just within the context of marriage and relationships, this could be with your boss, this could be with your brother, your neighbor. So, it's pretty broad in application. Understand how vulnerability can create either distance or closeness, depending on how you handle it. So, there's an interesting angle I want to bring to your awareness on vulnerability tonight. So, let's start with the first one. What makes her say, "He really gets me"? Realize that in a woman's heart, and this applies to men too, but it just really is really obvious in a woman's heart, the three layers. Notice on the far right where I drew a picture. Notice in the center that I have desire. Notice outside that, there's a feeling. Notice outside the feeling, there's an emotion. So there's three layers here. Okay. So behind her emotion, that feeling, behind that feeling, that desire. So when you uncover her desire, that is when she feels like you really get her. So here's a simple story that you could relate to understand this concept. If you're in a grocery store and you see a child on the ground just having one of those fits, man, he wants the candy bar so bad and mom told him no. We don't say, "Oh, look at that kid is being feeling." It's not even correct English. We would say, "Oh, look, that kid is being emotional." Because the action, the acting out, the thing you see happening when you walked around the corner, that wasn't feelings. That was the action, the acting on feelings. That was the emotion. So see the emotions on the outside. It's what you're seeing. It's the first thing that happens in the room when you walk in there that you notice. But behind that emotion, maybe for that little boy, he just had the feeling of not being able to get what he wants. And maybe that's because his desire was to have a candy bar. And so see how it's simple, the three layers there of the desire being the core fuel, the core starting point of what ended up being an emotion. So further on the screen here, I put the emotions in blue, I put the feelings in orange, and her desire in red. Because this is where a lot of us guys don't realize when we're connecting with someone, when we are communicating with somebody, the first thing that comes from them isn't the thing. If somebody is angry and upset, there isn't an anger situation. There's somebody who's experiencing a feeling, and they have the feeling because they have a desire. So when a woman is with a man and he wants to connect with her, and he sees that something is happening, and maybe it's uncomfortable, or maybe she doesn't like it, or maybe she's acting out, with your wisdom and your logical way of thinking, you can notice and immediately that this isn't the thing. There's something else. There's something behind this. If you start trying to talk about the first thing, like maybe it's frustration, maybe it's hurt. If you're trying to talk about that, break that down, get to the bottom of it, resolve it, you're going at the shallow level. You're keeping the relationship up at a place where it's in that blue ring on that circle. You're at the edges of her heart. You're not in her heart. The best way to develop a stronger skill of being able to go three layers deep in conversation is to start noticing it in yourself. When you have an emotion, sit with it and break it down and be like, what was I feeling that made me want to act out like that? And then what was my desire? A lot of times, fear is a mask for desire. The thing that we're scared of is actually indicating that there's something we desire. So it's a deeper way to have conversations when you can get to that part of the conversation and not get hung up on the shallower stuff. Two common mistakes that block good communication, no matter your situation. Mistake number one, we think poor communication is a problem to fix. So, this is going back to, like I said at the start, a lot of people will sit down with a marriage therapist or somebody and be like, yeah, we have a communication problem, man. There's some serious problems here. This needs to be resolved for this relationship to work. Well, poor communication can't be fixed because it's only a symptom. Many times it is the symptom of low emotional connection and from putting emotional pressure on the other person. I found this picture and I like it because see how she's kind of like upset and he's kind of like just being playful with it. And you can see in her eye that even though she's upset, she kind of likes it, even though she doesn't. And he knows it too. This is a positive tension. Like, honestly, a really juicy, good relationship is not this smooth, even keeled, we never get in an argument kind of scenario. It's actually dynamic. It's actually a lot of tension, but it's in a positive, playful way. It's you being in your lane and her getting to have her experience without you crumbling because of it. So, emotional connection naturally happens when we are secure enough to keep our heart open to another's emotions without being driven by like jealousy or insecurity or fear or triggers or the need to be right, which needing to be right is putting that pressure on somebody. You're not going to get good communication if that pressure is coming off of you. So in this picture here, I imagine that she's probably saying to him, you didn't load the dishwasher like I told you to. And I imagine because of his very playful way he's looking back at her, he's probably saying, yeah, I didn't load the dishwasher right, baby. I also left the toilet seat up, but has it been bothering you all day? I can see how frustrating it must feel. See, he took in that response. He's leading the conversation down some layers to address the desire that must be making her have this feeling, this emotion. If we're a man that keeps it shallow, we're going to get so hung up on the technicalities of loading dishwashers that we're never going to get to the fun, flirty, polarizing, playful energy, the positive tension that happens by you being able to hold space for her. And so I put in the pink on the left there that the annoyance fades to attraction since her words fell on empathetic ears, right? If he had immediately replied, what do you mean I loaded the dishwasher incorrectly? I followed the directions. It's how you did it always too. Like he starts to get defensive or justify himself. There would be no attraction to that man. That screams, I'm insecure about what I did and I need to defend it to you. I need you to approve it. Otherwise, I'm not okay. That kind of response prevents good communication. It would have naturally happened if you just had some ears available instead of a mouth available. So I made this on the right in blue. He stayed in his frame, created positive tension. And positive tension leads to sex. You can make a smooth relationship where everybody is so careful on not triggering the other person and accommodating their childhood wounds and speaking their love language, where it's all so magically functioning that it's actually a zombified version. It actually lacks passion. There's no spark, there's no chemistry. You'll find yourself in a sexless marriage. Like, do not be afraid of tension when it's in a positive way. This guy I thought was doing a great job of showing what positive tension looks like. Like, he could tell he's up to no good and she hates it, but she likes it. And I found this picture of some children. Because if you put infants together, what happens? They just start playing. They start trying to communicate. They start engaging with each other. Nobody has to force it. So we need to realize that emotional connection is a natural flow between people when they are relaxed. People just together, they start sharing, they start communicating, they start interacting. It's not something to work on. Nobody had to train these babies. Oh, when another human comes in the room, make sure you say something that makes you connect to them. It's like, no, they just start babbling back and forth and figuring it out. It's very natural. So, mistake number two, trying to share more when we feel negative, upset, or triggered. This is key. A lot of times when we're pulling the card of our communication isn't good, we're specifically referring to a scenario where people were not feeling okay. And we're like, this shouldn't have gone down like this. There should have been openness. There should have been somebody saying something. And so trying to share more from that negative space, I'll explain in the next slide why that doesn't work. So the other mistake that I tied in with that though is trying to get her to open up when she feels negative or is in a low mood. The story I use to illustrate that is if you're a small child, you're a little boy, you're at the playground, and you got your little Tonka truck, and you're having a good time in the sand over there, and you see some pretty girls on the swing sets. So you go over there and you say, "Hey, do you want to play with me in my truck?" And they say, "No, we don't like you." If you continue to push the issue as a kid trying to get those girls to play with you, it's not going to work. You're setting yourself up for rejection again and again. And so this is what we're doing when we're trying to get our wife to open up when she's in a negative space. You're trying to get her at the playground to play with you in your Tonka truck when she's not in a space to. Like the little boy needs to just reckon that they're not down for it right now. I should just go back to the sandbox and keep playing with my Tonka truck by myself. You can't force this connection or communication into somebody. Either they're willing and ready or they're not. And so you're there for it when it is, or you back away if it's not. So this is going to help you understand this concept better. In the middle here, I have three different moods. We've got the high mood, you're on top of the world. Got the calm and secure, that's just you floating down the lazy river. And we got those low moods. Okay, on the right side here, I have a picture of your wife that is hand drawn, so that way you don't have a strong emotional reaction. She just is a woman. She simply is an embodiment of feminine in your life. She's not good, she's not bad, she just is. When we are in a high mood, we tend to think thoughts like, she's my one and only, right? We have a positive view of her when we're in a high mood. When we're in that calm, lazy river mood, it's not that crazy. It's just, yeah, she's a human. I'm a human. It's not really good or really bad. It just is. But when we're in that low mood, that's when we start having those kinds of thoughts of she rejects me and she makes me miserable and she should have this and she should have that. Like she hasn't changed through any of this. That's what I want to point out. Your difference in thinking of her have only changed because of your mood. So most couples who try to communicate more to improve their marriage usually produce the opposite. Because letting the other person know how much their feelings stink is never a path to seduction or intimacy. Thoughts and feelings pass on their own. They're not problems to solve, or I should have added in there, talk about. So in other words, if you are in a low mood, that is not the time to be going to your partner and saying, here's all the stuff we should discuss. Here's these things I need to tell you about. We need to get clear on this thing. Like you are in a space where you're looking through a negative lens and it's going to leak out everywhere and make it worse. It's never going to produce a positive interaction. It's not going to improve your ability to connect. You should only be attempting to communicate and connect with people when you are in that calm, secure state. So here's the other problem with trying to do this even connection thing if you're in a really high mood, is you're blind to reality. Like choices made in this state lead to buyer's remorse or regret. So like some personal boundaries I have for myself when I'm in a high mood, like let's say I've just had a glass of wine. I'm in a pretty high mood. Garrett doesn't buy anything. He doesn't make any big life decisions. We tend to think things like she's my one and only when we're in that high mood. Like, do not propose to your girlfriend while you're having sex with her. That's like an obvious thing, isn't it? Like, you're not in your right frame of mind when you're in a really high mood. So don't plan your Christmas vacation plans right after you guys got off of a roller coaster or just went on a big adventure or just had a great night out. You're both vibing high. You're not in your right frame of mind, even in that high state. Same is true with that low mood. Everything's going to be negative, Nancy. Everything's going to be shrouded with shit. Talking about problems in this state will intensify the negative feelings, the pressure, or maybe some guys, they experience numbness. Women too. They turn into the ice queen. They just numb out. It's because you're not in a calm state. So calm and secure, a person who has that self-trust, where you're able to just see she's simply a person living their best life. How I want to receive that is all based on how I want to think about it. We don't care about problems in this state, really. We can give an empathetic ear quite naturally. We can have meaningful, intimate connection with others when we are in that calm, secure state. We need to notice when our mental narrative is preventing this state of mind, this calm, secure state of mind. Because this state is only ever one new thought away, right? You could look in your front yard and start to have a panic attack because you think a grizzly bear is eating your dog. And then you could realize that it's just a black plastic bag blowing across the street and it's not a bear. Like your entire nervous system changed based on what you thought. It's like you could have a rose. Three different guys could look at the rose, and one could say, "Oh, that's such a pretty flower and they smell so good. I'm so happy that that rose is on this pathway." The next man could see the rose and he could say, "Oh, I hate this. My wife, I gave her a rose and then she broke up with me and divorced me and ruined my life. You know, I feel so terrible when I see roses." And the next guy could see the rose and go, "Oh, what rose? There's a rose?" Like the rose is innocent. The rose means nothing. Your wife, your girlfriend, your ex-wife is innocent. It means nothing until you start putting your perceptions on it. That is where the pain's coming from. That's where your experience of the rose is happening. And you're only one thought away from a twist on that story that doesn't suck so bad. So see how you actually have power within yourself to bring yourself back to calm and secure without roses having to change, without your ex having to change. You don't need an apology from your abusive dad because your thoughts about it are what making it suck for you. This is a liberating concept to understand that you are actually self-reliant and capable of bringing yourself into a calm, secure state anytime you want to. So let's understand how vulnerability can create either distance or closeness depending on how you handle it. For some reason, we think vulnerability is when we share our deepest, darkest feelings, secrets, frustrations, the skeleton in the closet, this gunk from my past. I wouldn't ever tell anybody else because they might hurt me if they knew this thing. I don't know why we always default to thinking that that is what vulnerability is, because save that kind of vulnerability for your therapist or your coach or your mentor, not the woman you want to create positive sexual tension with. Now, this blew my mind when I first started to understand this, that the positive sexual tension you create with your partner is not because you've unloaded every single thing you've ever felt and thought in yourself and completely put it all on the table. There's actually some mystery about you. You're actually always kind of up to something and she's wondering what it is. There's actually a little bit of she kind of misses you because you have so much going on that she wants to be part of it. So, what your lover needs is a man who is vulnerable enough to face uncertainty, elephants in the room, an uncomfortable confrontation with courage and confidence. So, an example of what vulnerability actually looks like in a sexy, positive way, that's when you're in a family dinner and your uncle is being disrespectful to your wife and you put your neck out there. You vulnerably put your neck out there and you say, "Hey, Uncle Mark, that's not cool. Don't talk to my wife like that." That is the power of vulnerability, not in secret telling your wife that you've had a 40-year porn addiction and you've never been able to get past it. Like, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't confess that. What my point is vulnerability is attractive when you're using it to face uncomfortable stuff like conversations that need to be addressed or had, direction that needs to be led, confronting conflict that you've been shying away from. And it even takes vulnerability to say, "I think you're beautiful," when we don't know how she'll respond or take it. So it takes vulnerability to even say, "This sunset makes me feel warm inside," instead of remaining silent. So the distinction I want you guys to leave with this call is you can create better communication and better connection with anybody when you start seeing that vulnerability is the bravery and courage to just share what you really love and how it really impacts you, regardless of if it might be met with rejection. You might say, "I think you're beautiful." And she says, "You're just a pervert. You just want sex." Who cares? Who cares how she responds? You were courageous enough to expose this beautiful, wonderful thing that you had in you, and you brought it out into the open. That is the kind of vulnerability to maintain with the woman that you actually want to be building positive sexual tension with. By the way, I'm going to give you guys a link to my book. Some of you guys have already bought it. Some of you guys have already read it. If you guys haven't yet, I'm going to give it to you for free just by joining us in this call. I also want you guys to be aware that we are kicking off a special edition of the Vital Formula to Masculine Confidence course. this month. Um, I'm going to send you a link here in a second if you want to get on our waiting list, because on January 11th, which I think that's next Saturday, we're having a 24-hour registration where anybody that pays to secure their spot on that day gets to join. We're going to cap it at 8 men max. It's going to be a special one because we're including a special segment on powerful behaviors we've seen save marriages. Well, most of us coaches at Good Guys to Great Men have been working with so many men for so many years that we've seen trends of what works, what doesn't work, what tends to backfire. And so we're going to include a special segment in this group on what it looks like for guys that have saved marriages, guys that we've worked with that turned it around. Like, how were they showing up? What were they behaving like? So that'll be pretty cool. Uh, Let me go ahead and go to the chat right now. If you want a free copy of my book, you can use that link. The price goes back on tomorrow. I just took the price off for tonight so you guys could access it. But we've got 34 guys on this call right now. I'm sure there's a question or two, or maybe even a, yeah, I don't know, Garrett, that sounds like horse shit. So which one of you wants to come on and ask questions or challenge something I said? I'm all ears.